Okay, well, I'm glad, Israel, that you heard what you wanted to hear at the end of your presentation there. Thank you so much, Professor Israel Bendit, for sharing your wisdom and the Brazilian experience with us. Thank you, Professor Sue Branford, Dr. Dennis Kim, and Dr. Isabel Giere for your insights, and also the audience. We will move on to the second part of our discussion, when and how to look for BCR-able mutations when resources are limited. We will be introduced to the Argentinian experience in setting up a mutation testing laboratory and hear what are your options if it isn't possible to set up your own facilities. Isabel, would you like to get your slides up and moving for us, please? And whilst Isabel is loading slides, I'll let the audience know again that as Isabel works her way through her slides, we'll break at key points for discussion. And we'll invite Sue, Dennis, and Israel in the first instance to comment, but also open up to you, the audience, too. Please feel free to get involved. Use the chat function, use your virtual hand. You can speak in your preferred language and it will be translated for you. Please get involved. Okay, Isabel.
Well, first of all, I thank all of you and the International CML Foundation for coordinating this discussion meeting that brings us all together to interchange experience and knowledge. Well, I will speak about mutations analysis. Oh, sorry. Here. Well, we all know that there are several mechanisms, molecular mechanisms of resistance to TKIs in CML patients. But we are going to speak or to focus on this one, on the BCR Alberson protein in this talk. As we know, translocation between chromosome 9 and 22 conducts to a fusion gene, the BCR-ABL1, and its transcript codifies a protein, an oncoprotein P210 in the major cases.
Isabel, podés, I just interrupt because creo que tenés que poner la copita para que se vea toda la imagen.
I
think the image is not complete. I'm telling her to put the image complete just to see the screen, para que la veas abajo en la copita. Ahí está.
Now? It's okay? Okay.
Perfecto.
Well, thank you. And well, this protein is a tyrosine kinase that conducts proliferation. But when this protein is suppressed by the TKI, if it occurs in a special conformation, but when in the protein occurs some mutations, the TKI cannot block the site, and the proliferation goes on, and the TKI resistance in concordance with this. So there is some evidence of mutations in the BCR-ABL protein DNA sequence in patients with unsatisfactory responses. And we can see here that these mutations were detected by Sanger and by new generation sequencing in a high proportion of these patients. And well, that's the reason because we have to conduct these tests. And we have to know that a positive result not always is an indication of therapeutic change. So in addition to why we have to check these mutations or to investigate the mutational profile, we have to think about when to do the test, how to perform this test, and what to do with the information after that. So if we go for the when, for labs, we have to take care because relying on the transcript level on international scale, the mutation analysis should be considered in cases of not having achieved the expected molecular responses at different time points, M3, 6, and 12, and so on, when the MMR or the molecular response 3.0 is lost. We can see here the points we have to put our eyes and to suggest the molecular tests for mutational analysis. But before the mutational testing, we have to reconfirm by resampling. It's a good idea to reconfirm. So when another recommendations for when to look for mutations is indicated when failure or warning when during TKI therapy, first line or second line, according to the International Leukemia Net recommendations, or when a patient shows relapse after allogenic stem cell transplantation if this mutation was detectable prior to transplant. But the mutation testing is not indicated at diagnosis, at failure after TFR, except if not achieving MMR between 3 and 6 months after restarting the therapy. And also if in patients with MMR or deep responses. Another recommendations in other situations. On third line TKI therapy and beyond, the testing should be considered if there is no improvement of response after 3 or 6 months and the response worsens. And another thing we have to take care is about sequential monitoring of a mutation. And it might be useful in case of low-level mutations of unknown clinical significance, or if in case of no improvement in response after TKI switch. So how to look? Which platforms? There are untargeted assays like Sanger sequencing or next generation sequencing that these tests we can detect a lot of mutations in the pocket or in the region of the DNA we are, or in the transcript we are testing. But there are another alternative tests upon target mutation, like allelic specific oligonucleotide PCR, that is limited to a specific mutation, or a mass assay that is not a routine test, and digital PCR that we can design a panel of predefined actionable mutations to be investigated. So Sanger sequencing and NGS are the best assays or options to test all the mutations in these cases. Well, there are some another recommendations, minimal recommended region in the TK and the ABL tyrosine kinase domain. We have to check another sites for resistance to asciminib. There is a different region outside the TKD region. We have to take in mind those mutations that confer resistance to different TKIs. We have to think about the mutations in cis configuration or in trans configurations that put in evidence compound mutations in the first case, or different clones or molecules or independent clones in the second option, in the second case, in trans mutations, in trans configurations, sorry. And well, we have to know and to remember that for asciminib, there is a provisional list, and further data is needed to complete this. Well, here we can see a picture showing a lot of mutations in the kinase domain of BCR-ABL1 gene, and the inefficacy published to these mutations. So nowadays, the recommended platforms are NGS is recommended for detection of mutations. But nowadays, it's very limited, no? The technique for developing countries. Sanger sequencing was the gold standard screening recommended in 2011, and nowadays is acceptable when NGS is not available or accessible. Digital PCR is a very well first level screening for specific mutations. It's a rapid method, and well, we have to consider this also. And what to do and what not to do with the information. So we have to remember that the positive mutation result in more than 15% of BAF frequency should lead to a change, an immediate change of treatment. But when the result is positive under 15% of variant allele frequency, as here in many of 15% of mutated transcripts detected obviously by NGS or digital PCR, well, the therapy could be changed if the mutation is recognized to confer resistance, or we have to confirm the test again if the mutation detected was not recognized as a recurrent in CML, and no immediate therapy is needed if the mutation has an unknown clinical relevance. So
we might start with Dennis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so in our center, we are doing a single sequencing still, but we are now going to release NGS-based ABL1 kinase domain mutation testing in the end of this year. Once we can adopt it, then probably we might be able to detect more low-level ABL1 kinase domain mutation more frequently in our clinical practice. And in your last slide, I think that is a very important slide. Once we find it, what are you going to do? Still, we need more data to guide us what will be our clinical action for that. I think that we can adopt the same rule of failure, warning, and optimal response. If they don't have a mutation, it's optimal. But if they have a mutation more than 15% of variant allele frequency, or the higher number of the mutation, then it requires immediate switch of the TKI treatment based on their sensitivity. However, still it is not completely clear, but I agree. If that mutation is known to be converting to a TKI resistance, then it is not a warning, it is a failure. But if we do not know the clinical significance of that mutation, then repeated testing will be very, very required, and special attention is going to be paid to the specific cases for more frequent monitoring. So I think that case is going to be considered as a warning. Thank you.
Sue, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with all of those comments, and I think Isabel has presented very nice outline of all of the issues. Just a few things. I think Sanger sequencing is still broadly used and is a very good technique. NGS, I think it does enhance the sensitivity, but there are all these caveats. And I think before introducing into the diagnostic lab, it really has to be very well validated to a very high level because of this issue of being able to pick up these low-level variants that we may or may not know what is the significance. So I think they're the key points is to make sure that you really understand what these variants mean, and also that it is only missense mutations that are important. We continue to receive questions from around the world. What is the importance of insertions or deletions? And in the kinase domain, and I think the answer is none. So just consider missense mutations.
Israel.
Yes, we in our lab are using just the Sanger sequencing to identify mutations, and we are actually taking as the patient do not respond with major molecular response at 12 months, we just, or a failure, we just go for the mutation test. Otherwise, we don't do and just follow this patient. And also because we don't have many TKIs in Brazil, we just the TKIs approved there are imatinib as the first line and nilotinib or dasatinib. We do not have the bosutinib or ponatinib or asciminib. So we are very short of TKIs there.
Maria Rocio has said in the chat, are the guidelines to follow when finding a novel variant in BCR-ABL kinase domain? Isabel, would you like to?
Yes, pardon. Can you repeat, please?
Sure. So a question from the chat. Are there guidelines to follow when finding a novel variant in BCR-ABL kinase domain?
I have to read it. So, okay.
Or maybe Sue, Dennis, would you like to?
Yeah, I can jump in while Isabel finds a question. I think it's really important to make sure that what you are seeing, first of all, is not an inherited benign variant. So this, if the variant allele frequency is close to 50% or 100%, then it's important to make sure that this is not inherited. And if it's not inherited, then I think important to validate. So request another sample and repeat the test to make sure that this is a true somatic variant, and then consider it in light of the resistance profile of the patient. Is the BCR-ABL also increasing? And if so, then yes, it could be a novel new resistance-causing mutation.
Dennis, what would you do?
And also, I totally agree with Susan. And so whenever you see some novel mutation, then you just have to make sure that the best way to make sure it is not a inherited single nucleotide polymorphism, but it is a somatic mutation. That is that you just can match them with the BCR-ABL transcriptome level. That is one way. And also another thing is that it's a little bit out of topic, but nowadays after the introduction of asciminib, we are now seeing the mystory site mutation. I get that kind of question frequently from the other audience regarding the how to detect the mystory site mutation. I think that you just have to make sure that whether your ABL1 kinase domain mutation panel covers mystory site or not. If your ABL1 kinase domain mutation panel doesn't cover the mystory site, then you can't capture the mystory site mutation. In that case, then I think that if you are now thinking of developing the NGS panel, you should make sure that the mystory site is included in your NGS panel. You have to make sure that. Thank you.
A great question and some great responses there. Isabel.
Yes, I agree. First of all, we have to check that the novel mutation is a novel one. It's not inherited, and I think that there are no any guides for these cases, and we try to ask experts in the world, around the world, to check the variant. So We go on or not?
If you're ready to move on, Isabel, yes, please.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Argentina today. Argentina is my country. We are 46 million inhabitants and with 23 provinces and one autonomous city, Cava. I live in Cava. Cava is the capital of the country and with 3 million inhabitants. And here in the map, we can see the distribution of the 18 Argentine laboratories on international scale. Then they are located from the middle to the north of the country. But the south of the country can be monitored and be evaluated because we have a good transportation system for samples to the main labs. How is the health system in Argentina? Argentina has two groups, a population without health insurance coverage that use public health system. And the other group is a population with health insurance coverage in two systems, social health insurance with contributions and salary deductions, and a private sector where the financing comes from family expenses or out-of-pocket expenses. Here is the distribution nowadays in Argentina of the health system. So how are the unmet needs met? Great part of the health system does not provide support for molecular monitoring and mutational analysis. So these unmet needs are currently covered by pharmaceutical financing with a voucher system all over the country, or by direct agreements with government health systems, or through projects, research projects for CML patients in a non-profit organization or in national research centers like Academia Nacional de Medicina. So we started to work in this learning for the best tests in 2007, where some countries were invited for a preceptorship for molecular labs at the Princess Margaret Cancer Center in the Laboratory of Genetics, which the head of the lab was or is Susan Cameron. And we started to learn about the recommendations for special standardization methods for CML patients. And then walking around into the international scale, LATAM countries and labs were involved in a global standardization program at no cost for the labs, where we have to send many samples to Sue Branford in Adelaide, and then the local conversion factor was sent to us to inform or to make the reports on international scale. Argentina today has a standardization program conducted by Michele Bianchini and Irene Larek-Ripa. And in this regional program, there are many labs involved in LATAM, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, and Uruguay, and from Argentina, all the 18 labs I mentioned before. And it is important for the renewal of this conversion factor that is carried out annually, depending on the stability of the conversion factor in each lab. So some other solutions were made through projects carried out by FUNDALEU and the National Academy of Medicine with the financial support of Novartis cases. And well, the monitoring and the mutational studies were free or without cost for patients. And it was a solution. Well, here some presentations of our efforts with colleagues of Argentina and with LATAM, other colleagues. And well, nowadays, the mutational studies in Argentina are carried out by 6 labs: FUNDALEU, National Academy of Medicine, Centro Rossi, de Diagnóstico Rossi, LEB, Hospital Privado de Córdoba, y CIVIC de Rosario. And the aims are to catch early signs of relapse and to introduce changes in therapy. Well, this slide shows how the financial support is applied to molecular monitoring and to molecular studies of mutations by Sanger sequences. The last one has less coverage, but are many efforts for covering these tests for CML patients. Well,
Thank you. Fascinating. We might start with Sue for your thoughts and comments.
Well, firstly, I'd really like to congratulate Isabel and her team for the really proactive efforts over many years to ensure standardization and to work with other labs and to provide testing that may not have been available in many centers. And I think Israel is very active in this area as well. So that's my main comment, and just continue the good work, both within Argentina and also including other groups outside of Argentina as well.
Definitely a lot to learn from that experience. Dennis.
Congratulations for that long-standing effort and success and that kind of long collaboration. Congratulations one more time. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Lots of collaboration, which is what we as a foundation are all about. Israel, what are your thoughts? How does that compare to your experience in Brazil? Israel might just have gone to get a cup of tea or something. Any other comment? Oh, here we go. Hi, Israel.
Congratulations, Isabel. It's a nice work that you started when we went together to Toronto many years ago. So it's amazing work that you did with your team. But I have a comment, because looks like that Novartis is more sympathetic to Argentina than to Brazil, because the voucher program here in Brazil is ending next December. So we are going to lose a lot of PCR tests for monitoring, because I can tell you that many patients will be orphans of PCR tests.
Let's see what might be done about that another time. Are we ready to move on, Isabel?
yeah. Well, how the mutational testing can be carried out in Argentina? Well, 2 methods: direct sequencing and the detection of the T315I mutation by PCR. These are the methods we applied or we performed for CML patients with any suspicious of recaída, relapse. So to do it right from the beginning in Argentina and LATAM, FUNDALEU organized 2-day workshops, intensive workshops for labs only from labs with 3 aims: to update on diagnosis, rare variants, monitoring deep molecular responses, vet lab reports, and mutational studies for therapeutic targeting and global platforms, NGS. The second aim, to interact between hematologists and laboratory leaders in our country and in LATAM, and to learn how to incorporate the new lab setups along the last 10 years. And the experts, international experts, were invited: Sue Branford, Nicholas Cross, Simona Soverini, and the local ones, Isabel, Carolina Pavlovsky, Beatriz Moraghi, Michele Bianchini, Irene Larripa, as local experts. This activity was very, very interesting and achieved many improvements in our region. We have to remember recommendations in 2006 by Sue Branford and colleagues, then recommendations for mutation analysis by Simona Soverini and colleagues. Then came recommendations for definitions, standardized definitions of molecular responses, deep responses. And these recommendations were done by Ross, White, Mueller, and colleagues, Hochhaus and Saglio. And in last year was an update for laboratory recommendations by Cross and company and other colleagues. It's a beautiful publication. So the challenge is that the implementation of NGS approaches for mutation testing needs some challenges because there are no commercial kits. We have to batch samples in each sequencing run to balance cost effectiveness, and the turnaround time would be better if samples are centralized in a reference labs. In developing countries, well, new technologies must be incorporated, and setting up the testing in the labs requires significant investment in development, instrumentation, expertise, accreditation, and clinical integration. So collaboration with expert networks is crucial for standardization and ensuring high quality testing. And the question is how to find a mutation testing laboratory if it isn't possible for your center to set one up. So the solution is sending samples locally within the country, only Sanger sequencing, or referral to a laboratory abroad under local sanitary current regulations, and taking in consideration, well, the methodology used, the genes tested, and the sample requirements, and the TAT, turnaround time, and the cost of and insurance of coverage for samples. So again, we are in a new time of innovation in mutation testing. From 2020 to 2040, the innovation phase has a challenge in this new generation sequencing era for mutations and for the myeloid gene panel, those genes that can influence the follow-up of the patient. It is important to have a clear set of aims in general and specific objectives for medical and financial aspects. And a startup financial support for academic growth and expertise in mutational testing in CML would be convenient for LATAM developing. So I want to honor all patients, mentors, colleagues, and followers in our region, and in gratitude to the International CML Foundation. I think that time applied with enthusiasm and constant effort for deep knowledge is transversal to all generations and to the time. My thanks to each one of you and to all. Thank you.
Isabel, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. And what an inspiration to so many other centers out there. Dennis.
Yeah, one more time, congratulations. You're that kind of long journey from the PCR testing and the ABL1 kinase Sanger sequencing to now you are now heading to NGS era. And I'm so impressed with all that kind of activity. Thank you.
It's fantastic. Sue.
Yes, I totally agree. Just one thing that I've just thought of, I think it's a good idea to have centralized monitoring, particularly for these newer techniques. And one thing to keep in mind is also the quality of the sample is still very important. So just as we need good quality sample for BCR-ABL qPCR, we also need a good quality sample for mutation testing. So one of the considerations, again, is getting the sample off to the central lab as soon as possible, or stabilizing it in the collection center before sending to the lab. So that's all I had to add.
Israel.
Nothing to declare, just congratulate Isabel for this amazing work that she and her group did in Argentina.
It's fantastic work, Isabel. We'll give a couple of seconds more, see if anything comes up on the chat. Any other questions, any comments? Lots of congratulations. Oh, I saw something there from Lillian. Let me see if I can find that. Lillian, in case of considering the use of asciminib in first-line therapy, would you recommend to have the myristoyl site mutation study already available?
Can I comment on that? There
Please.
will be some myristoyl site mutation, and ask for first study also show that out of 200 patients treated with asciminib, roughly there are 7 cases at the end developed myristoyl site mutation. However, I do not think that our current sensitivity allow us to capture those kind of small minor clone in the beginning at the time of initial diagnosis of CML. So the answer is that still the ELN doesn't recommend any kind of ABL1 kinase domain mutation testing in the beginning in a newly diagnosed CML patient. So the same myristoyl site mutation, I think that there is no exception. Maybe we still do not need to test that the myristoyl site mutation in the beginning at the time of initial diagnosis of CML before they go ahead to even asciminib treatment. Thank you.
Isabel? Any final comment there?
Yes, I think that we have to develop the test to cover the myristoyl region of the protein, and we have to, the information is scarce about the mutations in this region, so we are running for having the best test for these detections. Today we cannot perform these tests, but we are learning about it, and we are going to develop soon, because asciminib is just installed in the media.
Sue, do you have a reflection on that question?
Just to reiterate that there is no role for mutation testing at diagnosis for patients in the first-line setting. but most of the currently known myristoyl pocket mutations would be detected by standard Sanger sequencing at this stage. Some of them are on the edges of the kinase domain, and there may just be some adjustments that may be needed to perhaps prime a location to be more comprehensive, but most are detectable with standard techniques.
Thank you. And if there are no further comments or questions, we might call it to a close. Thank you very much, Dr. Isabel Giere, for leading us through your experience. You've inspired lots of people there. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. Professor Sue Branford, Dr. Dennis Kim, Professor Israel Bendit, and Dr. Isabel Giere for sharing your experiences in testing, monitoring, and setting up high-quality laboratories when resources are limited. Thank you very much to the audience for your comments and your questions. If you have any outstanding issues, any burning questions or comments that you didn't get to, please send them to me, and I will get you a response from some of our experts. So we're well and truly over time. So that's it from me. Thank you. Gracias. Obrigada. I'll send links to the recordings to all three of our most recent discussions. Please visit our website and the Knowledge Center. It's absolutely packed with great learning. And feel free to contact me anytime with help with any CML matter. We are, as you can see, extremely well connected. Until next time, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.